I'm Toni Preckwinkle, Chair of the Cook County Democratic Party. I'd like to welcome you to the 80, our podcast about the party, its candidates, and its leaders. We're beginning the podcast by interviewing our elected Democratic committee people to discuss their backgrounds and thoughts about the history and future of our party. And speaking of the future of our party, I'd like to welcome our youngest committee person, Anthony Quezada, who is the grand old age of 25, and the committee person for the 35th Ward. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Toni. Thank you so much for having me. I have mentioned this in previous spaces, but I want to reiterate it again. I applaud your leadership for bringing, so many different diverse political perspectives into political discourse. I think that's an amazing value of your leadership, and I just wanted to thank you for having me on this podcast.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. I appreciate the encouragement. Now, the youngest member of the 80-person Central Committee, how'd you get involved in politics?
Well, like a lot of folks in my generation, we first got involved through activism. And I'm, still very heartfelt for the loss of Karen Lewis, the previous CTU union president. She and the Chicago Teachers Union probably were the first node of inspiration for my political activism when I was in high school at Lane Tech. The Chicago Teachers Union strike in 2012 inspired me to get involved. It gave me a lot of perspectives on people power, on worker power, on the ability to organize and fight for something better. And I just want to highlight a quick story of when the teacher strike first happened in 2012. I stayed up all night watching the press conferences to figure out if we were going to go on strike. And when it was announced that we were going on strike, I grabbed a piece of cardboard and I started writing all sorts of protest signs. And I was getting really excited because I knew that the next morning I was going to go to my elementary school and stand with my teachers and, fight for justice with them. And I remember going to my elementary school in the morning and walking with my cardboard signs under my arm. I was wearing shorts, I had a red t-shirt. It was of some sort of cartoon, but I turned it inside out so that it was only blank red. And I remember walking up to the color of
CTU.
Yeah,
red
exactly.
Is the color. That's right.
And I remember walking up to my elementary school and all my teachers were there already with their signs. And I started waving them out. I was like, hey, like Miss Bondaru, Miss Yost and everybody. And they're like, Anthony. And they broke down into tears because they felt that level of solidarity, from one of their own students. And I can't imagine what that feeling is like to be an educator and to see your students fighting alongside you. It must be really inspiring, but it's also really inspiring for students to see their teachers and their educators stand up for them and to stand up for our city as a whole. And I just remember that teacher strike being incredibly inspiring. I remember marching down LaSalle Street with thousands and thousands of educators. And, we're yelling at the towers of the banks, we're yelling at the Board of Trade, and we're saying tax the rich, we're saying, fund our schools. And I learned so much right there. And it's amazing. Educators can teach in the classroom and they can teach in the streets. And so it was political activism that first got me involved. And then as I got older, I started getting involved in electoral organizing and electoral politics. And it was the presidential campaign of Senator Bernie Sanders back in 2015 and the 2015-2016 cycle that really inspired me to get involved into electoral politics.
All right, so you got involved at the national level in 2016, okay, after having been involved at the local level through your community activism.
Yes, that's right. And I did get involved in some electoral organizing at the local level, some aldermanic campaigns. I was trying to volunteer, figure out, the game and try to figure out, what were the issues that were being discussed in my community. Mayoral campaign of Chuy Garcia was also really inspiring. But it was Bernie Sanders that literally pushed me over the edge, that just gave me a deeper analysis of what was going on in our country, what was going on in our community. And it's that inspiration that led me to where I am today.
All right. You're a member of the Central Committee of the Democratic Party.
Sure
actually, you came to talk to me about your interest in the party taking policy positions. And so, and the result of that, of course, is that I asked you to chair the committee. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a Democrat, right? I think that's a question that we all have different answers to. And growing up, in a working class family, I'm the son of two immigrants. My father's from Mexico, my mom's from Costa Rica. The only way we talked about politics growing up was that we were Democrats, right? I remember my mom talking about Bill Clinton, and we had some sort of like White House like picture frame that had like Bill Clinton, I think Al Gore. It was weird, but I just knew that we were strong Democrats. And I remember wanting Al Gore to win in 2000 because my mom was talking about it. I remember wanting John Kerry to win in 2004. And when I would ask my mom, like, what does it mean to be a Democrat? She would say, it means helping out the poor, right? It means helping out people who are oppressed, right? It means helping out immigrants. She connected it to the struggles that we faced as a working class immigrant family and the struggles that our communities faced. And that's what I thought being a Democrat meant. And as I grew up, I started hearing different criticisms about our party, about our leaders. During the Obama years, folks were criticizing the deportation regime. They were criticizing the bailout to Wall Street. And so all sorts of different criticisms were coming into light for me. But I always understood that, our party, had an inclination to help out working people, that we weren't, being dismissive, we weren't racist, we weren't xenophobic, and that we had a base and roots in the American working class. And that's something that I really believed in, and that's something that I wanted to help grow. May it be the Democratic Party or any other party, the main priorities should be the struggles of working class people and the movements for social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. And so I joined the Cook County Democratic Party, ran for committee person last year with that message and goal in mind, and to bring in more people into the political process, because so many people have lost distrust from not every single leader within our party, but some key leaders and some patterns that people have seen. People have seen trends, people know about what's going on, and people are losing so much trust. And so I came into this position wanting to highlight, some of the issues that my generation and generations before me have been raising for so many years, and to try to advocate on their behalf and to try to bring them into the process. So when I was first elected and we spoke, I said, do we have a place where we can talk about what positions we're taking as a party? Because that's what people want to hear. I'm somebody who canvasses and knocks doors year round. And so I'm always talking to people, and people want to hear what we stand for, not just what we stand against. People know that we stand against Donald Trump and the Republican Party and their attacks on working people. But at the end of the day, we need to make very clear what we stand for. So this is why I wanted to explore this policy committee within our party, so that we can have those discussions, have those debates, and put forward an agenda that speaks to the needs and concerns of working class people in our county.
All right. And what were some of the first actions taken by your policy committee?
So we first, in our first meeting, we just had like a brainstorming activity. We wanted to figure out what are some of the things that are impacting our communities and what are some of the legislative solutions that are being discussed right now. Some of the things that are being discussed right now, of course, due to the COVID pandemic and prior to that, we have a horrible healthcare system. We have a healthcare system that is profiteering off of people's illnesses. We have a healthcare system that is not able to meet the challenges and needs of working people. And one of the best, legislative solutions that is being discussed right now is Medicare for All, which is also known as a universal healthcare system, a single payer healthcare system. There are different definitions for it. But one of our committee members brought up Medicare for All. We discussed the Green New Deal, which is a legislative solution that is being pushed forward by progressives like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York and Senator Bernie Sanders, that would create a green infrastructure plan, federal jobs program that would put 20 million people to work, so that it would address the economic conditions that our country is facing, while at the same time laying down the infrastructure that will help us, navigate the climate crisis. And we discussed other local issues like an elected school board for the city of Chicago. We discussed rent control to address the rent crisis and looming eviction crisis due to COVID-19, and various other policies, including expanding voting rights for folks. And so we had our first brainstorming activity. As chair, I want to want to hold one more meeting for the rest of the people who weren't able to make it to provide their input. Again, sticking to my principles of democratic decision making and inclusion decision making. And then the plan is to bring in some policy experts, people who are impacted, people who are working on the ground to our committee meetings to discuss these policies and the need for them, to speak in favor, to speak against. I think that kind of democratic decision-making space and discussions and areas for debate will be healthy for our party. And they will help make clear to our voters, to our members, where we stand on these issues.
And as I recall, as a result of the recommendation of the policy committee, we communicated to our congressional delegation, our 2 senators and our Congress people, our support for aid to individuals and families in the midst of this pandemic. I think that was the first thing that came out of your committee.
That's absolutely right. I was getting really excited talking about the policies that we're advocating for. But yes, the first concrete action that we took place that took place was a discussion around sending a letter to our congressional delegation of Cook County, or the representatives who represent the County of Cook, to signal to them our support for continued $2,000 payments for impacted families right now. And then we also advanced a policy a resolution that you put forward, and that our committee, very much supported, to condemn the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th.
Right. The party had not previously had a policy committee. And so I want to commend you, first of all, for putting it forward, and then, not just putting it forward, but being willing to chair it. So very
Absolutely.
good. Very good. All right. Now, so my question, you said at the beginning of our discussion that you want to talk a little bit about the future of the Democratic Party. So what do you see ahead of us, particularly in the Biden-Harris administration, and kind of what you want to see, not just in the next maybe 4 or 8 years, but where you want to see, what the direction you want to see the party going?
Absolutely. This is I think that the issues that are facing our country are issues that have been facing our country for many generations, right? And maybe it's just my youthful optimism that says my generation can tackle it and can finally figure out some of these problems. But I also do think that we're running out of time, right? The threat of climate change, for example, is something that we cannot kick that issue down the road. We can't kick the can down the road, right? We need to figure out real systemic solutions to real systemic problems. And so I think our party has a decision to make. Are we going to continue advancing the same pragmatic solutions that have put us in this position and that continuously fail? Or are we going to tackle this problem head on and make some real enemies? I think there are real people.
Make some real enemies, okay.
Yeah, because I think there are some real people that stand in our way. Wall Street, for example, stands in the way to real economic justice and environmental justice, right? They play a key role in influencing legislation at the federal level, and we need to stand up to that. So I think the Democratic Party, hopefully, and something that I want to inspire within our voters, our members, and our leaders, is that we can take a hard stance and say, no, enough is enough. We're not going to allow Wall Street and mega corporations to continue funneling millions and millions of dollars to our elections and to influence our legislation. So I think we need to figure out a plan for our party to incorporate itself with the struggles and movements that we're seeing in the streets today. I think that is the real source of our power. It's people power, not money power. And so I think this really kind of just goes down to the fundamental core of our party. And I think we need to figure out, which side do we stand on? And I believe, I really do believe that we stand on the side of people. I believe we stand on the side of justice, but we need to put, actions to our words, and we need to really, advance some of the more core systemic solutions for our problems.
Well, Anthony, I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of the 80. Anything you want to leave us with? Final words?
No, I just want to thank you so much for having me. I look forward to hearing from our other committee people on what they see as the future for our party. And I'm really excited to see where our policy committee goes and what kind of solutions we can put forward for our county and to inspire the rest of our party.
Well, I want to thank you for your willingness to lead that committee and congratulate you again as the youngest member of the Cook County Democratic Central Committee on your good work. Thanks much.